Hello and welcome back to the IrishRacing.com YouTube channel. Ahead of the jump season, we're back with another series of Emma's Eyecatchers in association with Tony Bett. To kick off the series, I was thinking of giving my 5 novices to follow for the National Hunt season. Going to stay away from any Cheltenham Festival winners, no Grade 1 winners or anything like that. So hopefully names that are flying slightly lower on the radar than some of the other big ones out there. Make sure to let me know in the comments below which novices you're most looking forward to, but here are my 5. Let me know what you think. First on my list is Wingman from the Gordon Elliott stable. He's a dual bumper winner from last year. He actually rounded off his season winning a Punchestown bumper, which has produced Ballyburn, Tagmen and Dysart Dynamo in its last 3 renewals. So it's probably not a bad place to start when you're looking for a top novice coming through next year. Gordon had 2 of the first 3 home in the Cheltenham Festival bumper, which makes me think he might still fly slightly lower on the radar than some of the other big names from the stable coming into novice hurdling this year. He's a fair handful Wingman, which is probably the one worry about him for his followers. First time out in Naas, he pulled so hard under Harry Swan. It was actually really impressive that he was able to pick up again and win that day. He showed kind of a real willingness to battle it and pick up again, which is impressive for those horses who pull hard, because a lot of the time they actually can't find much when they get off the bridle. It was a similar story next time. He met William Money in Naas again. Probably even more awkward for Harry that day. He hung really badly, and given maybe the higher quality of opposition, it was still a really good run in third. Again, he showed that he wanted to battle once he came off the bridle, and if he was a little bit easier on himself, he probably would have been a lot closer to the first 2, I would say. He rounded off the year then, winning that Punchestown bumper. Like I said, he was a lot more relaxed that day, which was encouraging. Thinking about him coming into this year, Harry kind of let him bounce out in front. He dropped his hands and he did things much more easily. I think he looks like a horse who's going to relish an obstacle in front of him, and Gordon seems to be really keen on him, giving on quotes after every run so far. He said he's a quick horse, so maybe one that could even stay over 2 miles, but I think he could be a real player in this novice hurdling division. Next on my list is Bioluminescence from the Gavin Cromwell stable. She's a daughter of Walk in the Park, owned by JP McManus, and will be going novice chasing this year. I suppose we saw last year how well Gavin can do with the Walk in the Park progeny, and I'd imagine this is a filly that they've just been dying to get over fences. She actually won her point-to-point for Gavin in Boulta a couple of years ago. JP bought her then. She went on to run in 1 bumper. She was behind Duntamarville in Limerick. Duntamarville went on to win a Grade 3 bumper after that, so form of that was quite good. She had a relatively quiet year then last year over hurdles. I'd imagine they were probably more gearing towards this year with her. She's a big, strong, kind of imposing type of filly, and both of her wins came on heavy ground, so you'd imagine she'll probably relish the real testing conditions in the depths of the winter this year. After one of those wins, Gavin actually commented that she was a 3-mile chaser in the waiting, which would kind of make you sit up and take note coming into this season. I was particularly impressed with her Grade 3 hurdle win in Limerick that day. Even just watching her jumping her hurdles, like, she looked like a filly who was just crying out for something bigger in front of her. And I'd imagine she'll probably absolutely eat a fence when she gets to see one on a race course again. Look, I think everything's probably been geared towards this year with her, so she's definitely one to keep in the notebooks. Whether she'll stay in the mares chasing division or mix it with the boys will be interesting to see, but definitely one to keep a note of. Hopefully it'll be a big year for her. Next on my list, I'm going to stay with the novice chasers for now, and I'm going to go with Gorgeous Tom from the Henry de Bromhead stable. I suppose a bit differently to the last 2 I mentioned. We actually have seen Gorgeous Tom already this year. He won his beginner's chase in Wexford. What was actually quite a hot beginner's chase for the time of the year. There was a few 130 plus rated horses in behind. Cheltenham Festival winner Jazzy Matty was in there as well. So it wasn't a bad beginner's chase. He actually didn't have a whole pile of jumping to do that day, but from what we saw of him jumping, he was quite good. He actually went on to fall next time then in a Grade 3 at Tipperary last weekend, but I'd forgive him for that. He had been jumping well up to that point. He just kind of made an opposite mistake, and he probably learned from it as well. Possibly notable that he seems to be taking the same route as Arkle winner Put the Kettle On from the same stable. She also won that same Wexford beginner's chase in 2019 and went on to the same race in Tipperary. And before her bid at the Arkle, she went in Cheltenham once after that as well. So it'll be interesting to see where Henry goes next with Gorgeous Tom. I suppose last year it took him a few starts to get off the mark over hurdles, but maybe hard to blame him given he met Slade Steele the first day, I think, and then Caldwell Potter next time out. But he did get off the mark eventually. Actually ended up causing a bit of an upset at the Punchestown Festival towards the end of last year. He beat Mr. Giff in the Louis Fitzgerald hurdle, Mr. Gift looked well in that day. He was a grade 1 performer over hurdles, rated far superior to anything in the field, but Gorgeous Tom stepped up on the day and beat him quite comprehensively, which probably gave Connections the confidence to go for the Galway hurdle next time. He didn't quite perform in the Galway hurdle, but look, given the race was run, it's kind of hard to take away from the horse too much on that one alone. Henry seemed to kind of keep him over the 2 miles mostly last year. I always thought he looked like a horse who wanted 2.5, but given how good Henry is with those 2 mile novice chasers, you wouldn't rule out a campaign over 2 miles either. But I just think he's probably one maybe slightly under the radar and probably one to keep on your side coming into his novice chasing division. Next on my list, I'm going to switch back to the hurdlers, and kind of surprisingly, the first on the list from the Willie Mullins stable. It's kind of hard to find Willie Mullins horses maybe a little bit under the radar. I'm going to try and stay away from the likes of Ballyburn and those. So I'm going with the mare Fleur au Fossil. She's a dual bumper winner from last year. And maybe similar to Wingman, I was just taken by how hard she was on herself while still winning her Grade 2 bumper at the Dublin Racing Festival last year. Anyone who maybe can't remember the race or maybe hasn't seen the race already, I'd encourage you to watch it back because it was a really taking performance. She was jumped out the back by Jodie Townend that day and just pulled so hard the whole way through the race. I think eventually about 5 or 6 furlongs from home, she tanked her way to the front and looked like she was after taking off and ruining all chances she had of winning. But again, it was really impressive how she was able to kind of dig down and find another gear in the finish to kick away from a field, a quality field. I mean, I think there was 8 individual bumper winners in the race, the likes of Aurora Vega in behind her as well. So I think you can take plenty of encouragement from that. She went on to run in the champion bumper at Cheltenham and again at the Punchestown Festival, but maybe pulling so hard, probably just caught up on her a little bit that day. It was probably lofty enough targets, given the way she was racing last year. I'm just hoping she's going to kind of harness that energy a bit better over hurdles. Maybe having something in front of her might slow her down and make her think a bit more about what she's doing. But we know how well Willie can do with these mares in the novice hurdling division. So she's definitely not one I'll be writing off just from a couple of bad ones towards the back end of last year. If she can kind of get her head right, I think she could be a big player in this mares division. And yeah, maybe Fleur au Fossil, one slightly under the radar from Willie Mullins' yard. Last on my list, it's going to be 5 novices from 5 different yards. And the last one comes from the Emmett Mullins yard. Possibly one of the bigger names in the list. It's Bone Masan, who obviously won the Grade 2 Future Stars bumper at the Dublin Racing Festival last year. He came from the point-to-point field, point-to-point for Cormac Doyle, came to Emmett then, and in fairness, he's caused 2 fair upsets on his 2 racecourse starts so far. First off, in Fairyhouse, he met D.B. Cooper, who vibes around him seemed to be he couldn't be beaten in that bumper that day. But Bone Masan, in fairness, even though he was green on the day, he got the job done and he did it well. Even looked to be idling in front, but when the second horse came towards him, he went on again and they pulled, it must have been 20 plus lengths clear of the third that day, which is always a good sign in the bumpers. He went on then, he was set a stiff enough task going for the Future Stars bumper at the DRF, the likes of Redemption Day, A Dream to Share, kind of proven Grade 1 bumper performers in behind there that day. And in fairness, he looked a much sharper horse that day. He kind of seemed to learn his job from that experience in Fairyhouse and got it done in any matter of ease under Derek O'Connor. Couldn't have been more impressive. Unfortunately, we haven't seen him since then. He did suffer an injury after that, but I'm hoping he can come back and announce himself back on the novice hurdling division if that injury hasn't taken too much effect. Maybe one with a bit of a health warning, given that we haven't seen him since last February, but I think he's a horse with any amount of potential, and if he can get back in that kind of shape over hurdles this year, he could be a massive player. Well, those are my 5 novices to follow ahead of the National Hunt season. Make sure to let me know in the comments below who you're most looking forward to seeing this season, and if you like the content, make sure and like and subscribe to the channel.